Hi everyone, my name is Stacy Badke and this is my presentation on Case Study Module 12. First of all, I would like to talk about Section 1, and in Section 1 I am going to be talking about the facts of the situation of what happened, where it happened, and who was involved. The situation happened at St. Regis School. This is a small school located 25 miles outside of the nearest city. This school serves students in grades kindergarten through 8, and once the students enter high school, then they are transported into the city to the high school. They have very little funds and resources, and PTA works with them on fundraising that happens twice a year. So the situation that happened was there was a violation of copyright laws. The media specialist in the library had made several copies of a software program and distributed them to all 2nd through 4th grade teachers for them to utilize within their classrooms. The people that were involved were the principal, which is me, Mrs. Sample, and the library media specialist, Mrs. Lynn, the PTA president, Mrs. Evans, teachers, who would be Mrs. Brandon, who reported it, and then all 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade teachers were involved as well. So in the second section, I'm going to talk about the legal issues as well as ethical issues that happened and what to be aware of. As stated before, there were copyright laws that were violated, and so unauthorized copying of software is illegal, and the copyright law protects the software authors and publishers just as patent law protects inventors. And also, unauthorized copying of software by individuals can harm the entire academic community. If this authorized copying proliferates on a campus, the institution may incur legal liability. So with Mrs. Lynn copying computer software and distributing it to teachers to utilize within their classroom, the school could be under legal liability for that happening. There was a breach of contract, and a breach of contract is a failure without legal excuse to perform any promise that forms all or part of the contract. So Mrs. Lynn was in breach of contract as she did not follow her contract and by copying all the software. She knowingly distributed the copyrighted material to teachers, and in doing so, she put the teachers and school district in jeopardy of the software company filing a lawsuit, as she did not receive consent from them first. So some ethical issues to keep in mind are that Mrs. Brandon was one that witnessed Mrs. Lynn distributing the copied materials to teacher. Mrs. Brandon also witnessed several teachers using the copied materials within their classrooms. And Mrs. Brandon did the right thing as she was following the code of ethics, and she reported it to me, the principal. Mrs. Lynn, on the other hand, proposed for me, Mrs. Sample, to not make a big deal about it since she was saving the school money, and she thought that she was doing a good thing by helping to save that money, as well as utilizing the computer software in a more efficient way. Therefore, it put me as the principal in a morally and legally obligated situation to report the issue. And this could hinder my relationship with Mrs. Lynn, also the PTA president, Mrs. Evans, who was also involved in the situation, and the other teachers that have utilized the computer software within their classroom. Section 3 talks about exactly what happened in one sentence. By copying and distributing unauthorized software for teacher use, Mrs. Lynn put St. Regis teachers and school district at risk of legal consequences as she has violated the copyright law. In section 4, we're going to synthesize the facts. So we're going to talk about the people, the place, and the program. So the people involved, again, as mentioned before, there's individuals and groups. The individuals involved were me, Mrs. Lynn, Mrs. Williams, Mrs. Brandon, Mrs. Evans is the PTA president. And then the groups would be second grade teachers, third grade teachers, fourth grade teachers, second grade students, third grade students, and fourth grade students. The place that it happened, again, is St. Regis School, which again is a small rural town, has 2 grocery stores, 1 drugstore, a few other businesses that serves people's basic goods and services. There's 1 school that serves K through 8, 2 classes per grade, so 2 teachers per grade level, and there's 420 students within the school. And St. Regis is 25 miles from the closest large city. And then the program is kindergarten through 8th grade, as mentioned previously, and it is a public school of 420. In section 5, I'm going to talk about the information that was involved in the situation. We're going to review and prioritize it. Was the situation damaging to individuals and groups? Yes, it was damaging to the stakeholders that were involved. So again, Mrs. Lynn, Mrs. Sample, Mrs. Evans, all 2nd through 4th grade teachers, and then people that were unknown that are involved in the situation but don't know about it are the superintendent, the school board, students, and then the publishers from the software company were never notified that there was a violation of the copyright law. But these are all stakeholders that are involved, and the incident is causing harm to them. So section 6, we're going to talk about some options and possible consequences that could happen after this incident. First of all, if there could be no action taken, as Mrs. Lynn suggested, and she would like for the teachers to continue to use the copied software within their classrooms because it saves money. The comprehensive action, have Mrs. Lynn take back all copied software and dispose of them, fire Mrs. Lynn, Mrs. Evans, and all teachers in violation of the law, and contact the software publishing company. To me, this is a little extreme. However, this would be the comprehensive action. A third option would be to speak with Mrs. Lynn and Mrs. Evans individually and talk about what had happened, dispose of all the copied materials, and get the superintendent involved. A fourth option would be have a mandatory meeting with Mrs. Evans, Mrs. Lynn, and all teachers involved in violation of the copyright law to let them know what they did was illegal and they have put the school in jeopardy of being sued. A fifth option would be to create a copyright policy within the St. Regis School District and provide required annual professional development on the policy once it's implemented. So now I'm going to talk about section 7 and talk about the pros and cons of each option. So if we choose option 1 to take no action, some of the pros would be students would continue to use the computer software and advance within their technology education. Also, nobody gets in trouble because nobody knows about it. And the cons of that situation would be the school's integrity is lost from not reporting the situation and following ethical codes. No one learns from the mistakes that were made. Nobody knows about the copyright law and continues to make those mistakes and putting the school in jeopardy. And the school is still in jeopardy of being sued if no action is taken. If the comprehensive action is taken, option 2, the school gains integrity by following legal, moral, and ethical values. The cons of that action would be students lose access to the software, loss of many experienced teachers and having to fill those roles again the following year, and the possibility of losing the PTA president, Mrs. Evans. If option 3 is chosen, the individual meetings with Mrs. Lynn and Mrs. Evans, the pros of that situation are teachers are made aware of their harmful actions, and the superintendent is also made aware to help the situation, a very important stakeholder. Cons of just having individual meetings would be that Mrs. Sample, myself, my integrity is in jeopardy as I did not report it to the publishing company, and I didn't get rid of the copyrighted material, as well as other teachers are in the know that we are in violation, so my integrity is in jeopardy. School could still be fined or sued, and teachers are still not educated on correct actions within the copyright laws. If action 4 is chosen, to have a meeting with all staff, the pros of that would be teachers are made aware of their harmful actions, and the cons of that would be teachers lose respect for administration because they're being called out in front of their coworkers and nothing's done about it. They're just being told what they did wrong. The school could still be fined or sued, and teachers are still not educated on the correct actions in regards to copyright laws. Number 5, if this action is chosen, creating a policy and professional development, all teachers are educated and following the same guidelines and policy would be one of the pros. And a con would be publishers from the software company are still not aware and lost money. And there's still potential for school to be sued and students lose access to computer software. So there are pros and cons to every action being taken. But next, we're going to talk about what option I think would be the best option. I think if we combine option 3 and option 5 together, that would be the best route to go. If I discuss the situation individually with Mrs. Lynn and Mrs. Evans and let them know what's going on, also that they violated a copyright law and that this is a serious issue because we put the school in jeopardy of being sued or fined. The copied software is collected and disposed of. We get rid of whatever they did. All the CDs that were copied on would be disposed of. And I would let them know that I'm meeting with the superintendent and discussing the issue further and be prepared for what could happen. But I would also let them know that I'm advocating for them and that they know that I hope that there is no consequences because they did not know that they were infringing on this law. And then a district copyright policy is created and implemented within the district. The superintendent and school board are involved in the implementation of the policy, and also training and professional development on the copyright policy is required for all staff. So those 2 options put together, I feel would be our best option here. So as far as implementing these 2 best options, the first thing we would do, or I would do, is meet with Mrs. Lynn and Mrs. Evans separately and individually and communicate with them how by copying the computer software there was a violation of copyright law and a breach of contract, and explain what both of those mean. I would also explain that there will be a meeting with the superintendent next to update on the current situation and to have the superintendent provide guidance on how to move forward. The superintendent will be made aware that Mrs. Lynn and Mrs. Evans did not know they were violating and infringing on the law, in hopes to keep that relationship between myself and them on a in good standing.